Dinghai Fusion Records. Chapter 11. Gyuwang. A sudden clap of thunder struck the ground. Great Tian Ye Xiang searched for this title in his memory, and remembered that he had forgotten most of the time he spent living in Jinyang 9 years ago. His father had once mentioned that the title Great Tian Ye originated from the Xiongnu people, to identify the monarch of the Hu tribes. However, after Lu Yuan led the Xiongnu people through the pass and founded the country Hanzhou, Great Tian Ye turned into an empty title used to beguile Hu people beyond the Great Wall. It was a title with no real authority. Over several decades, Hanzhou collapsed, the Xiongnu people's imperial Lu clan was decimated, and the Han's Ranmin established the state of Wei, conferring the title of Great Tian Ye onto his own son to govern all the Hus. After the fall of Ran Wei, the Hus in the north could no longer tolerate the Hu people attacking one another. After entering the pass, they smeared blood on their lips to take an oath under Qi Le Chuan, re-established the covenant and termed it the ancient Qi Le covenant, as well as electing a Great Tian Ye the Shulu tribe of the Tile people. Since then, the Great Tian Ye became the Hu chieftain in name and naturally commanded all of the 5 barbarians. All the tribes of the Central Plains imperial court took turns performing on stage. After the previous performer left, everyone took turns sitting on the emperor's throne, yet they still couldn't ignore the effects of a Great Tian Ye both within and beyond the Great Wall. Aside from the Di, Ji, Qiang, Xianbei, and Xiongnu, there were many nomadic people beyond the Great Wall as well, and those tribes still treated the chieftain as their leader and would obey his orders. However, all the tribes are unable to work together. After all, they had always been divided in terms of the way they lived their lives, the places they lived in, their conflicts of interests, and there was often a great amount of internal strife within the tribes themselves. The Great Tian Ye position in the ancient Qi Le covenant was thus established to mediate, or even suppress the internal disputes within tribes and the disputes they had between tribes. More importantly, although the 5 barbarians had entered the pass to live there, their ancestors' bloodlines and roots still lay beyond the Great Wall. Entering the pass had resulted in an endless number of disputes among the tribes, but it was only right and proper for everything old to be replaced with the new. The old elders in each tribe had no power to stop their tribes from abandoning their homes and their large-scale migration to within the pass, yet they were still unwilling to lose the power they held in their hands, so they elected a Great Tian Ye with the intention of controlling the Central Plains. No matter if it was Han, Zhao, or Ran Wei, including the Qin dynasty at present, as well as the Yan kingdom under the Murong clan that was wiped out by the army Fujian commanded, if one wanted to establish a country and be called emperor, they cannot avoid going through a ritual, that is, to wait for the leader in name of all the Hus, the Great Tian Ye, to come forth from the north of the Great Wall. He would then confer a scroll to the emperor marked with the blood of the various tribes, with parchment bound with a gold ribbon to express the loyalty and allegiance of all the tribes both within and beyond the Great Wall. This process was also known as golden conferment of purple scroll, because blood smeared on sheepskin would appear light purple in color. No matter how stable a foreign emperor's rule was after entering the pass, this process could not be neglected. And it was precisely because of this that the emperor himself seldom holds a concurrent post as the Great Tian Ye. No one would want to confer the purple scroll upon themselves after all, otherwise they would definitely turn into the joke of the 5 barbarians. During the reign of the Ran Wei dynasty, the Great Tian Ye was a mere nominal title, but it may not necessarily be so for Fujian. When Fujian conquered the area within the pass as the chieftain of Xi'an for generations, he had once obtained tremendous help from the ex-Great Tian Ye, Shulusong. Not only did the allied army of the Hus control the enemy for the Fan family, but they had also turned into a powerful chess piece in the hands of Fan Hong. The Fan family had even been loyal to the Jin dynasty before for a short time and had obtained the tacit consent of the Great Tian Ye, such that they could gain a firm footing. Fujian established the Qin state, and after his death, his son, Fusheng, succeeded him, and Fujian was appointed as the king of East China. Fusheng was both licentious and despotic and always acted in perverse ways, resulting in the eruption of a civil war within the Great Qin. It was the Great Chanyu, Shuluwen, who united the tribes to help Fujian take control of Fusheng's army. In the end, aside from the contribution of his own talents, the most important reason Fujian was able to obtain half of the country in the north was due to the help he obtained from the Shulu family beyond the Great Wall. But what Chen Xing never expected was that the protector he had inadvertently saved from Xiangyang city would actually be the heir of the Shulu family. Fujian burst out laughing and draped an arm around Xiangshu's shoulders to welcome him into Dengming Palace, yet Xiangshu seemed accustomed to it and casually pointed somewhere to ask Chen Xing to sit there. "Serve some food," Xiangshu said. "Haven't had lunch yet even though it's this late, I'm hungry." Fujian immediately dismissed the officials in the palace and asked someone to deliver their meals. Tuoba Yan was as baffled as Chen Xing, and both of them just looked at each other. Surprise emerged in Chen Xing's eyes. He gently waved his hand to signal that he has absolutely no clue about anything at all either. Dengming Palace was the place where Fujian read and amended memorials to the throne. In order to govern the north, this Qin emperor shouldered an immense responsibility. Even if few people could understand him, he was indeed doing his utmost and consumed most of his 3 meals in the palace. At this time, Murongchang had already been designated as the Taishao of Pingyang, and had gone over to take up his office. Ever since Murongchang left his side, Fujian had rarely even seen the concubines of his imperial harem and spent most of his time diligently handling political affairs. "You disappeared from the face of the earth just like that for a whole year," Fujian said. "I've sent news out and have been searching everywhere for your whereabouts." Very soon, wine was served. Xiangshu drank a little and answered, "Well, life is too short, and it's a long story." You copied me." Chen Xing thought. Fujian made a gesture to dismiss Tuoba Yan, indicating that there was no need for him to stand on guard any longer. Only the remaining 3 people and an eunuch who could be ordered around remained. "And who is this little brother?" Fujian looked at Chen Xing, his interest piqued. "You haven't introduced him yet." "A kid picked up from the streets," Xiangshu said. "I thought he looked beautiful, so I brought him over to present him to you as a catamite. But he's a mute, unfortunately." Chen Xing immediately turned to Xiangshu, and Xiangshu added, "You're not a mute." Fujian burst out laughing again. Chen Xing said to Xiangshu, "Why didn't you tell me you're the Great Chanyu?" Xiangshu answered coldly, "How is my identity any of your business? In any case, I'm not a protector." Fujian smiled at Chen Xing and asked, "How exactly did the 2 of you get to know each other? And what other nonsense did Shulakong spout? This fellow must have slandered Zheng quite a bit in front of you." Chen Xing had completely accepted everything by now. "Hold on, isn't this person Fujian? I'm talking to the Qin Emperor, Fujian, right now." Too many things had happened tonight, confusing him so much that he didn't know what to ask for a moment. At that time, another beautiful woman came in with several other palace maids. As soon as she saw Xiangshu, she said lightly, "The palace was in such a mess just now, and after that someone even said that there was an assassin and asked me to lay low. I said that there was no need, and it was most likely the Great Chanyu who had come, and sure enough, I was right." She was practically the most beautiful girl Chen Xing had ever seen in his life, though he hasn't seen many girls in the first place. She was dressed in a plain robe and wore no rouge or powder, but she was still clearly of the Xianbei race. Her skin was as fair as jade, her eyebrows so perfect that they looked as if they were drawn with dye, and she seemed slightly cold and amorous. Princess King He, when Fujian saw Chen Xing study her, he smiled. "Have you heard of her?" Chen Xing immediately nodded out of courtesy, his eyes filled with admiration. Fujian was a broad-minded person and read it as a sign of Chen Xing lauding the beauty of his favorite concubine, and felt as if something he loved had received a commendation, so he was very pleased. Princess King He led the palace maids to serve them food, then personally poured wine for Xiangshu, Chen Xing, and Fu Jian. Immediately afterwards, she led the rest of the people out, leaving the three of them to talk among themselves. Chen Xing saw Princess King He whisper some instructions to Tuoba Yan outside the palace, then Tuoba Yan bowed, left, and the door to the palace closed. Only then did Xiangshu motion for Chen Xing to eat before saying to Fu Jian, "A year ago, Guowang was investigating a matter and headed south from the north boundary, all the way across the Yellow River." Chen Xing knew that Xiangshu was giving an account of his disappearance to Fu Jian, and that he was finally willing to give Chen Xing an explanation as well. He paused for a moment and decided not to ask any more questions. In any case, he was hungry, so he could think about it again after eating. How curious must Fu Jian be about Xiangshu and Chen Xing's relationship? He first scrutinized Chen Xing for a while before his attention returned to Xiangshu. "Oh," Fu Jian said, "something should have happened after your father died of illness, ba?" "Yes." Xiangshu raised his glass and drank with Fu Jian, then continued, "Happened in my first year after taking over the great Chanyu post." Fu Jian frowned deeply. He guessed that for Xiangshu to suddenly charge into Viang Palace right now, he must want to warn him of a major occurrence. Actually, in recent years, the Hu people beyond the Great Wall had been crossing through the pass one after another, and the Hu and Han lived together and even roved around as nomads to the north of the Great Wall. Calculating up the total, while only considering adult men, there would be close to 100,00 of them. It couldn't be considered a small number, but it was definitely not a huge one either. Xiangshu took over the post of Great Chanyu from his father at the age of 16, yet vanished without a trace in the second year. Fortunately, for the various tribes beyond the Great Wall, the Great Chanyu was accustomed to a lifestyle like drifting clouds and wild storks, so disappearing for a few years did not cause any serious issues. However, Fu Jian had not undergone the golden conferment of the purple scroll from Xiangshu yet, so he was extremely anxious to determine his whereabouts. On the south bank of Liahe River, the Valano tribe was exterminated overnight. Xiangshu said. When Fu Jian was reminded of this, he immediately recalled, a small tribe. Descendants of the eastern people. The Valano tribe was one of the subordinate tribes of the Xianbei people, who the Hans called the Eastern Hu. Fu Jian naturally wanted to avoid such a taboo, but this kind of tribe wasn't that important to him. Xiangshu said, the cause of death was very strange, they had all turned into living corpses. Chen Xing paused again, then looked up and stared at Xiangshu in disbelief. Oh! Fu Jian was baffled as he asked, living corpses? Xiangshu answered, the Hans call them drought fiends. Legend has it that once drought fiends appear on earth, severe droughts will last for years. This was what Xiangshu heard from the conversations Chen Xing had with Feng Qinjun on their way to Chang'an. Chen Xing continued eating his dinner, but a multitude of thoughts were running through his mind. Every incident started to get strung together. Xiangshu's words finally answered the doubts he had along the way. Oh, Fu Jian seemed skeptical and apparently still did not understand what Xiangshu was trying to say. Without waiting for Fu Jian's response, Xiangshu continued, the murderer fled south at that time. When I chased him to the south, I somehow fell victim to his sorcery and lost all the strength in my body. A Jin army just so happened to find me then and trapped me in the pass, then took me to Xiangyang to be imprisoned. After that, due to a strange combination of circumstances, I was able to escape from prison when the city fell. Chen Xing. Xiangshu's tracks gradually became clear in Chen Xing's mind. That mysterious black-robed man's accomplice had already appeared as early as a year ago. What were the forces behind the black-robed man secretly plotting? Thousands of people from the tribe had all been turned into living corpses, and Xiangshu set out south in order to pursue the matter. In the end, he was taken prisoner in the south and escorted to Xiangyang. No wonder he would head out to Mt. Longzhong alone when he passed through to investigate the turning of corpses. But Xiangshu must have concealed some things, or in other words, he didn't think it necessary to reveal anything more to Fujian. Chen Xing began planning. He had to discuss this in detail with Xiangshu later. Half a year ago, due to a strange combination of circumstances, I managed to escape from prison, and when I passed by Mt. Longzhong on my way to the north, I found new. Fortunately, you made it out, Fujian smiled, otherwise I really wouldn't know how to account for it to the ancient Qi covenant. My imprisonment is secondary, Xiangshu continued, I really can't figure out the oddity in this. Never mind, Fujian waved his hand to indicate that there was no need for him to continue, let's not talk about this first today. We can continue this small topic another day, it's good as long as you're back. Xiangshu narrowed his eyes slightly, but didn't answer. Chen Xing could keenly detect the sudden emergence of Xiangshu's anger. After getting interrupted twice by Fujian, Xiangshu didn't continue any further. Both sides suddenly fell silent for a moment, as if they were both thinking about something else respectively, then Fujian smiled again. Stay in Chang'an during this period, don't leave BA. Xiangshu did not answer. Fujian continued, when summer comes, I'll set up an office for you after I offer a sacrifice to the heavens. Brother still has many things to slowly discuss with you. Xiangshu was still thinking, his gaze seeming quite complex. Chen Xing finished his meal and observed Xiangshu, while Xiangshu caught a glimpse of him from the corner of his eye and instantly called out in a loud voice, servants. People came in from outside the palace, and Xiangshu motioned, take him away to rest. Then he said to Jufian, talk here if you have something to say. Chen Xing smoothed out his clothes and hesitated, then, he saw the palace maids make a please gesture, so he left Dengming Palace. A group of eunuchs were bowing as they waited for him, seeing as how he was someone by the great Chanyu's side, they dared not slight him and quickly led him to the sleeping chambers to rest. But after they had taken just 3 steps, a loud noise blared from the palace behind. Chen Xing got a huge shock and was about to look back when a group of eunuchs rushed forward and peered through the cracks of the door. Once in a while, they would hear Fujian's angry rebukes. Chen Xing wanted to peep as well, yet the eunuchs quickly waved their hands to indicate that nothing was wrong and sent him to the sleeping chambers for his rest. This was the most comfortable place Chen Xing would sleep in ever since he left Qinling Mountains. Below Fujian's palace were heating tunnels, the whole room was warm, incense fumigated the bed, and the palace was bright inside. A screen was set up in the center of the room, and smoke curled upward from the incense burner. Washing utensils, hot cloth towels, and every other necessity had been prepared. A screen with a beautiful woman painted on it served as a partition between the interior and exterior. The exterior was for entertaining guests, while the interior had one large and one small bed, one for the master, while another for a guest. After the eunuchs withdrew, Chen Xing walked one around and saw that there were beds both inside and outside the screen and wondered if Xiangshu would return to this room later as well. Then he lay down to sleep on the large bed with his clothes on. Great Chanyu, while Chen Xing tossed and turned about, he was thinking. Xiangshu had revealed too much information to Chen Xing in front of Fujian. From the looks of it, Xiangshu and Fujian seemed very close. In that case, the hopes of him recruiting a protector seemed to become even dimmer and dimmer. Chen Xing waited for a long while and didn't see Xiangshu come in, so he simply fell asleep. He didn't know how long he had slept and was in a muddle-headed state when he heard a noise coming over from the palace door. Someone had entered. Get up! Xiangshu's voice rang out. So Chen Xing had to sit up drowsily. Yet Xiangshu continued standing and looked down at him, then stretched his hand out a little. Chen Xing was all muddled from sleeping and didn't understand what Xiangshu wanted. A hug. So he shifted closer, hugged Xiangshu's waist and leaned on him. Xiangshu was stunned, as if he had just seen a fool. He lifted Chen Xing and pushed him aside, then said angrily, "Are you crazy?" Chen Xing woke up in an instant. "What are you doing?" Chen Xing said angrily, You're bullying me again. The eunuchs outside heard the noise they made and hastily came in, saying, Great Tian Ye, let me serve you ba. Yet Xiangshu raised his hand impatiently, motioning for all of them to leave. Only then did Chen Xing realize Xiangshu wanted him to serve him by changing his clothes. Chen Xing, why should I serve you? The expression on Xiangshu's face was extremely unsightly, but Chen Xing suddenly realized that there was a purplish patch on Xiangshu's cheekbone. It was evidently a new wound, so he asked in astonishment, You picked a fight with Fujian? Xiangshu looked impatient and sat down on the edge of the bed, but Chen Xing just continued sitting in a daze, so Xiangshu had to change by himself. He untied his belt, revealing the snow-white underclothes within. Chen Xing thought, and I'm even the one who bought the set of clothes for you. He saw that Xiangshu was obviously in a bad mood, so he went forward to hang up Xiangshu's outer garment and fetched some hot water for him to wash his face with. He threw the cloth into the bronze basin, and water splashed all over Xiangshu's lapel. Xiangshu. Chen Xing, I don't know how to serve people and have never served anyone before either. Don't treat me as your servant. If you want to chase me away, I'll leave right now. Even though you're the great Tian Ye, I'm not afraid of you. Xiangshu took a deep breath and just wanted to roll his sleeves up to hit him. But as the great Tian Ye, beating up a young man who lacked the strength to even truss a chicken would be too disgraceful, so he could only let it go. He casually pointed at the other bed to mean, Get your ass over there to sleep. Chen Xing climbed onto the other bed. Xiangshu said calmly, During this period, you're allowed to live in the palace on the condition that you'll get to the bottom of one matter. Chen Xing faced the wall, covered himself with the blanket, and lay motionless on his side. Xiangshu glanced at Chen Xing's back and continued, the matter being where the drought fiend chaos started from, and who the masterminds behind it are. Hear that? I'm listening. Chen Xing said impatiently. The more Chen Xing thought about it, the more annoyed he became. Xiangshu obviously didn't think much of him. Yet after thinking about it carefully, he realized that it should be so. The two of them were not related to each other in any way, so he had no right to boss Xiangshu around. Thus, he could only swallow his anger and say, Okay, I got it, I'll investigate it. But if necessary, you'll have to provide me with assistance. Yet Xiangshu refused, I don't have that kind of time to spare. Chen Xing, you. Chen Xing couldn't help turning over and had wanted to make a few sarcastic remarks like, even though you're so amazing, weren't you still locked up in a big prison under Xiangyang? If Laozi hadn't saved you, you would probably be dead by now, but after seeing Xiangshu's handsome side profile that was extremely good looking as he lay down under the night lights, his anger completely dissipated, and the complaints he harbored couldn't leave his mouth. He thought, never mind. At the very least, he's someone I saved, so if I want to blame anyone, I can only blame myself for my bad luck. I don't need you to follow me. Chen Xing said, I need to check Chang'an's official books and records of the previous dynasty, so I'll still have to investigate in the city. You just have to make it convenient for me. Xiangshu didn't answer. Chen Xing knew he had heard, so he turned back and slept. It was the smoothest and warmest sleep he had had in the past several days. Winter left, and spring came. He slept until the sun had risen 3 poles high. 2 or 3 peach blossoms had bloomed in the palace courtyard, and Chen Xing was awakened by the murmuring of voices outside. For a moment, he thought that he had been stealthily sold into a market beyond the Great Wall while he was sleeping, in the palace beyond the screen. It was so noisy that he woke up with a start. Xiangshu had already changed, washed up, and eaten his breakfast. He had changed into a dark blue brocade gown. The gown was embroidered with an eagle, wolf, snake, fox, crane, bear, and so on. With golden thread they were the 16 totems of the Hus in the ancient Chi-Le covenant. His hair was tied in Niamang braids, 3 gemstone rings shone on his left hand, A dark gold belt with a soaring dragon on it was tied around his waist, and black deerskin boots covered his feet. Both his eyes were bright and pitch black, looking just like stars, while he wore a grave and stern expression on his face. With an indolent look, he was just like a wild animal that had entrenched itself on the couch in the middle of the hall with one foot on a short wooden table as he faced the people who had packed the hall to the brim. Nevertheless, his appearance really couldn't be considered boorish, especially after his handsome face was all tidied up. He had a fair complexion and vermilion, rosy lips, seeming just like a brocade had wrapped around a white jade statue without the slightest hint of a martial man's barbarism at all. Chen Xing walked out from behind the screen dressed in a snow-white unlined garment. The clamour in the hall died down at once, and everyone's gazes whooshed over and landed on the body of this thin, Han young man. The two of them looked at each other for a brief moment, then Chen Xing immediately went back behind the screen to change and wash up. He heard the voices that traveled over from beyond the screen and could roughly guess that this group of people had come forward to lament to Xiangshu. Each of them belonged to different tribes beyond the Great Wall. Aside from the 5 barbarians who had already entered the pass, there were still other tribes who were rather powerful, such as Tile, Ruren, Shiwei, as well as many other remote families of the Xiongnu people who weren't under the jurisdiction of the government. These barbarians, who were even more boorish than the 5 barbarians within the pass, were called hybridized Huas by all the Hans. Amongst them, someone was speaking in a Xianbei dialect, and Chen Xing had learned the Xianbei dialect before. He could understand that these dozens of Hu people were complaining about the policy of respecting the Hans and rejecting the Huas, and they all hoped that Xiangshu would stand forward with his status as the great Chanyu and support the Huas who had emigrated to within the pass. Even words like overthrow Fusheng, revere Xiangshu as the emperor of the north and re-establish the country had come out. Xiangshu listened quietly and didn't reply. Chen Xing thought, this bunch of Huas really aren't afraid of death. They dared to openly offer proposals on how to get rid of the emperor right under Fujian's nose. When he went around the screen again, he saw that his breakfast was already set out on a small table in the hall and was placed in a copper plate as if it were dog food. Chen Xing just minded his own business as he ate. Chen Xing noticed that Xiangshu had already finished drinking his cup of milk tea, yet he was still turning it over and over in his hands and fiddled with the silver cup studded with gemstones. I want to go to Gongko, Chen Xing suddenly said, yet his voice was drowned out in this noisy environment. Xiangshu ignored him as well, but Chen Xing knew that he must have heard him. He stared at Xiangshu, but all he saw was Xiangshu's dazed look as he gently flicked the cup with his finger. Xiangshu! Chen Xing had called out a few times and finally couldn't tolerate it anymore. He roared angrily, Shulakong! Xiangshu finally spoke and shouted impatiently, who do you think you're talking to? Xiangshu's voice was like a clap of thunder, and the group of people in the hall were all stunned at once. A bunch of old and young Hu people saw that Chen Xing actually dared to be this rude, so how could they let this be? They all instantly drew their knives and daggers and excoriated him. As they closed in, they brandished their weapons, which flashed as they placed them against Chen Xing's neck. Chen Xing! Xiangshu looked at Chen Xing like he was challenging him and raised an eyebrow slightly. He thought that Chen Xing would immediately cower in fear and beg for mercy, but he didn't expect for Chen Xing to not be the least bit afraid. Where did this Han come from? Kill him, kill him. Someone immediately placed a dagger against Chen Xing's neck, gesturing as he turned his head around to look at Xiangshu. Is it okay to kill him? It's not okay. Chen Xing was like a chicken waiting to be slaughtered as he said angrily to that man, I'm busy. He had never been afraid of death. After all, most things didn't matter much to someone who knew he only had a few more years left to live. I want to go to Gongko to look up the list of old residences when Chang'an was being repaired. Chen Xing said patiently. Do you know who you're talking to? Xiangshu said coldly. Chen Xing, you're their great Chanyu, not mine. We agreed on this last night. If you want my help, you'll have to provide me assistance. Xiang Shu studied Chen Xing with a dangerous glint in his eyes for a moment, then finally made a gesture and dismissed the group of Hus who were surrounding Chen Xing with their weapons drawn. He said calmly, "Guards." An imperial guard immediately entered. Chen Xing then smoothed his robes with a grumpy expression, got up, and left with the guard. End chapter. Dinghai Fusheng Records. Chapter 12. Acting as a matchmaker. The imperial guard outside glanced at Chen Xing, revealing an apprehensive expression. "I won't hack people at will like Shulakong," Chen Xing said, "don't worry. You just need to take me to Gongko and help me explain a little." That guard quickly waved his hand, as if he was extremely nervous and looked only at the ring on Chen Xing's hand. Evidently, the guard couldn't speak the Han language. He bowed slightly in haste when he saw the ring and seemed very ill at ease. Chen Xing recalled now this luminous stone ring of primitive simplicity was given to him by Tuoba Yan, who had casually taken it off, so he asked in the Xianbei language, "Where is Tuoba Yan?" The guard immediately bowed and made a pleased gesture, signaling to Chen Xing to wait here for a moment before turning around and trotting away to deliver the message. Chen Xing. Soon after, a figure turned around the corner at the end of the corridor, and he wore a dark red martial robe with a crescent-shaped wolf-fang dagger that was about a foot long hanging by his waist. He passed through Viang Palace where its entire courtyard were filled with spring flowers fluttering in the breeze. It was the dashing and elegant Tuoba Yan. Chen Xing smiled, "Brother Tuoba." Tuoba Yan smiled amidst the spring breeze. He scrutinized the surroundings, seeming a little embarrassed as he quickly said, "Where are you going?" "I'll accompany you." Chen Xing hurriedly refused, saying, No, I'll be troubling you too much." Yet Tuoba Yan smiled, "It's all right, being on duty is boring anyway. I'll walk around with you." Then he took off a bracelet strung together with lapis pearls on his wrist and handed it to Chen Xing, saying with affection, "Here, I'll give this to you." No. Chen Xing immediately said with a stern expression, "Why are you giving me a gift again? And I was thinking of returning the ring to you too." As soon as they met, Tuoba Yan wanted to give him a gift, which was very awkward for Chen Xing. The two of them pushed back and forth. Chen Xing wanted to take off the ring, but it was stuck and he couldn't take it off. He insisted that he did not dare to accept it, and Tuoba Yan said, "I've already taken it off, how could it be reasonable for me to take it back?" In the end, Chen Xing could only continue to wear the ring. He explained his purpose in coming. Tuoba Yan pondered for a moment, then said readily, "Okay, I'll take you there." There were many guards in the palace, and they were all obviously well trained. They walked like the wind, never glancing sideways. As soon as the guards on patrol saw Tuoba Yan, all of them retreated to either side of the path to give way, bowed, and performed a Xianbei salutation. A carriage was waiting at the entrance of the palace. Tuoba Yan first asked Chen Xing to get in one, and Chen Xing was about to move aside to make space for him when Tuoba Yan put down the curtain and flipped onto the horse, then rode along beside him. The imperial guards cleared the way, while a mounted regular attendant accompanied the procession. This was a treatment that only the great Qin Son of Heaven could receive. Chen Xing couldn't help but start feeling uncomfortable. He drew the curtains and looked out, while Tuoba Yan had casually glanced at him at the same time. He pointed his left finger at the hand that was wrapped with the reins of the horse, motioning for Chen Xing to look at his ring. "You've always been wearing it?" Tuoba Yan asked. Yes." Chen Xing began to have a vague sense that something was amiss. Tuoba Yan was truly too passionate towards him. Tuoba Yan couldn't have fallen in love with him at first sight. He just didn't know if Tuoba Yan treated everyone like this, or if he only treated Chen Xing this way. Tuoba Yan's nature didn't seem like that of a Xianbei at all and instead seemed more like that of a Xiannu. He never talked in a roundabout way and asked again, "Why are you following the great Chan Yu? What relationship do the two of you share?" It was still okay when no one asked this, but as soon as this question surfaced, Chen Xing finally couldn't hold back anymore. He extended a hand out from inside the carriage and grabbed Tuoba Yan's lapel. Listen to this very carefully. So Chen Xing described the whole process of how he got to know Xiangshu in its entirety. Tuoba Yan listened with a baffled face, and after they arrived at the entrance to Gongko, he nodded at Chen Xing. As soon as the Gongko officials saw Tuoba Yan, all of them saluted him one after another. It was as if the two of them had walked into a no-man's land as they arrived at the place where dossiers were stored. So, Chen Xing said, "Now, I have to properly investigate the problem regarding the changes in the Chu authorities." "So that's how it is." Tuoba Yan seemed to ponder, then smiled again, "And I even thought you were the great Chanyu's family member. People have always said that he and the Hans are on. Right after Chen Xing spoke, he immediately sensed that Tuoba Yan might have wanted to say, "Thought you were the great Chanyu's wife," and in order to avoid awkwardness, neither of them spoke. Under Fujian's reign, the imperial court still followed the three provincial systems of the Jin dynasty. Under the Department of State Affairs, ministries were further divided into the ministries of personnel, palaces, war, farming, revenue, and works. Ministry of Personnel was mainly in charge of the promotion and demotion of officials. The Ministry of Palaces was in charge of managing the imperial family and royal court, rites, and other such ceremonies. The Ministry of War was the department responsible for conscript Iona and starting wars. The Ministry of Farming was in charge of the entire country's farms, land, irrigation works, and construction matters, while the Ministry of Revenue was only in charge of finances, and the Ministry of Works was in charge of all affairs related to forced labor and population shifts. 6 ministries commanded 15 sub-agencies, and each sub-agency had a director who was in charge of all political affairs within, no matter how big or small. The Gongko that Chen Xing had arrived at was the newly refurbished extension of the government agency that corresponded to the ones in Chang'an, Luoyang and other cities. At that time, except for some military officials of the imperial court, almost all of the civil officials were Han people, and all the written exchanges were written in the Han language as well. It wasn't that the court didn't want to use Hu people, but the younger generations of the 5 barbarians officials were only capable of wreckage and couldn't understand how to govern a country at all. Their languages weren't uniform either, they couldn't read, and they wouldn't be able to hold themselves back from scolding the other party for being a barbarian when they started quarreling. A group of barbarians would end up being so noisy that they can't get anything done, so in the end, they had no choice but to turn to the Han people for help. Fujian often read sacred books ever since he was young and had always yearned for a flourishing period for Confucian classics in the Central Plains. He knew that though the Hu people had dominated the north by force, their hegemony would certainly not last long. What's more, it's hard to say who would win or lose a war, because wars have always depended on the right timing, along with the geographical and social conditions then. The Hans were the weaker side in the past 100 years only because the Jin dynasty was addicted to carnal pleasures. When it came to military warfare, the Hans were not the least bit sloppy. Since ancient times, from the time when Emperor Qinzhuang retreated to Zhejiang to save the Zhou royal family, to the Han dynasty and even the Cao Wei dynasty, they have always beaten up the tribes beyond the Great Wall until they cried out for their fathers and mothers every time. When the names Li Guang, Wei Qing, Huo Qubing, and other such names were heard, those beyond the Great Wall wouldn't even be able to take a single step forward. It was precisely because of this that Fujian issued a strict order for all Hu tribes beyond the Great Wall to change their Hu customs and read Han books. Otherwise, they would still just be monkeys wearing hats. They had to take advantage of these few decades when the Hans were temporarily unable to resist to quickly unify the world. Otherwise, if they waited for the masters of the Central Plains to snap out of their stupor, it would be difficult to tell how things could end up. Seeing Tuoba Yan accompany him personally, the director of the Gongko knew that Chen Xing could not be slighted, so he personally retrieved all the files documented in the past 100 years in Chang'an for his perusal. You can understand it? Tuoba Yan saw that the silk fabrics packed densely together that filled his view were covered in square characters and looked just like heavenly scriptures to him. Of course. Chen Xing didn't know how to respond to that at all and answered, "At the very least I am a Han." The director of Gonko held his forehead with one hand and threw a glance at Chen Xing, meaning that he should watch his words when talking with a barbaric who lest he angers them. Chen Xing sat upright and bowed slightly, knowing that he meant well. The director of the Gonko said, "Lords, please take your time in reading." Then he left. Tuoba Yan, this is an ancient writing? Not many Han people would be able to recognize it. Chen Xing then smiled, "I've learned it since I was a child, that is, by reading and writing essays. I followed my dad all the time, so I was influenced and gradually learned the language." Tuoba Yan personally went to roll up the curtains a little, such that natural light could spill in. Pear trees were planted everywhere in Chang'an City. A few snow-white petals would float in once in a while, and the spring air was both relaxing and pleasant. "Can you recite Song of the Person of You?" Tuoba Yan asked. Chen Xing didn't know whether to cry or laugh. He flipped open a file. "What night is tonight? We are rowing on the river. What day is today? I get to share a boat with the prince. The prince's kindness makes me shy, I take no notice of the people's mocking cries. My heart filled with longing, and I'm fl uster to know the prince." Tuoba Yan smiled, "There are trees in the mountains and there are branches on the trees." Chen Xing was absent-minded as he casually said, "I adore you, but you do not even see me." The two of them sat upright on a broad couch. Chen Xing, with his clothes on and all, respectfully invited out the documents that were sealed in a wooden box hundreds of years ago. He had barely managed to piece together the scraps of paper as he began restoring the map of Chang'an in the Han dynasty. Tuoba Yan watched Chen Xing's movements that made him look like he was performing a magic trick from the side. For a moment, only the rustling sounds of paper scraps moving could be heard in the room. Chen Xing pieced together half of Chang'an's map before realizing that Tuoba Yan was looking at him. He connected it to the glance that the director of the Gonko had thrown at him before, and had a vague perception that there were too many undercurrents that existed between the Hus and Hans. They were separated by massive rivers difficult to pass through, and they were always watching the other side with much vigilance. The Hus were wary of the Hans, and within this wariness, a slight sentiment of admiration could be felt. It was as if the Hans were naturally better than the Hans, like immortals who had fallen into the mortal world. The five barbarians didn't know how to deal with them for the time being, so they could only foolishly and madly round up the once superior masters of the Central Plains, then wantonly humiliate them to vent their feelings and express that cruel destructive desire of theirs. "Do you want to learn how to read Han characters?" When Chen Xing thought of this, he suddenly said to Tuoba Yan. Tuoba Yan immediately said, "I want to, but I can never learn how." Chen Xing guessed that the scholars in Chang'an City were fed up with all the Hus and had no interest in developing any educational methods for them. They were even less bothered to learn the language of a barbaric tribe like the Xianbei. As a result, they would only teach them casually, and it would be their good fortune if they managed to learn something, but if they couldn't, then it would just be too bad for them. Thus, Chen Xing magnanimously wrote a poem, which was the first poem of 19 old poems marching on, and it was the first poem his father had taught him when he was learning to read. Then, he added the phonetic notation to every word in the Xianbei language. Marching on, living far away from you, Tuoba Yan started learning how to read the Han language characters seriously. "We stand more than 1,000 miles apart, each of us at opposite ends of the sky." Chen Xing found the building markers of Chang'an in the Han dynasty 300 years ago and began retrieving the drawings of that year. He smiled. "Did His Majesty Fujian ask you all to read the books of the Han people, as well as examine them in detail?" "Not only that," Tuoba Yan said helplessly, "on the 1st and 15th of every month, We are even tested. When I studied the Han language, it was Lord Wangmeng who taught me. Tuoba Yan spoke the Han language fluently, but he couldn't recognize the words. Fortunately, Fu Jian knew that it wasn't easy for military officers, so the assessment criteria for them weren't as strict as for civil officials. Wangmeng Chen Xing stopped moving, and started thinking about many things after hearing this name that he hadn't heard in a long time. He went to the shelf to take down the drawings for the year he needed and casually said, "Looks like His Majesty likes Han people very much." Tuoba Yan gazed at the writing paper, then looked up slightly and glanced towards Chen Xing before withdrawing his gaze again. He continued, "The decree issued earlier this year stated that if we were to intermarry with you Han people, we would get an additional pension. For officials of a 5th level and above, the emperor would bestow upon them a pair of heirloom jades and personally preside over the wedding ceremony for the tribe's children." Chen Xing smiled, then, "Does Brother Tuoba intend to get a Han wife?" Tuoba Yan's face suddenly flushed red. He saw Chen Xing go up on tiptoe to reach the scroll on the top shelf of the bookcase, so he got up to help him take down a large bundle easily. He raised a finger, pointed upward, and answered. "Wuxiang still wants to wait a little longer, because His Majesty still has a decree waiting to be promulgated." "Oh." Chen Xing reached out to take the scroll and asked, "What decree?" "When the time comes, no matter if one is a man or woman in this world, they can all be taken as wives." Tuoba Yan answered solemnly. Chen Xing didn't catch them in time as all the scrolls plummeted to the floor, crashing everywhere. "Chen Xing." Tuoba Yan quickly bent over to help him pick them up. "And only you Han people are still opposing it, otherwise it would have passed by now. Isn't that nonsense?" Chen Xing had lost his temper. How could men get married? Isn't His Majesty acting too recklessly? Tuoba Yan retorted, "Why can't they get married?" Chen Xing, that. Chen Xing picked up the scroll and listened to Tuoba Yan's explanation. Only then did he know that Fu Jian actually had those sort of thoughts. Several years ago, Fu Jian was dearly fond of the siblings Princess Qinghe and Murongchang, and he was especially serious about his feelings towards Murongchang, calling him Phoenixer. He cared even less about the comments of people from all over the land. Since ancient times, if superiors had certain interests, their subordinates would certainly follow their example. All the tribes began imitating Fu Jian one after another, especially those of military origins. They often took pleasure in pursuing beautiful young men and engaging in romantic relationships. Chang'an customs thus became more and more intense. Those from noble families could become sworn brothers in name when it's actually a marriage between two families, and this is an act held in high esteem. Only the Hans of Chang'an all thought, if you want to adopt a toy boy, then just adopt a toy boy. They're all just leftovers of what our old ancestors were playing with, and there have been no lack of such things ever since Liu Bang's times. But insisting on taking them out and openly talking about them, doesn't that just mean there's something wrong with you? But when Fu Jian looked out again, he sighed with regret and was even less able to let go of Murongchang, who had gone far away to Hejian's Pingyang to take up post as its prefecture chief. He was determined to implement a new marriage policy throughout the country. He would make it acceptable for all men of the right age, no matter if they were Hu or Han, to marry another man. It was as if he wanted to use this new decree to tell Murongchang how he felt. And now, the Han civil officials collectively erupted. How could that be acceptable? It was a subversion of ethics, a disorder of yin and yang, touching on a huge taboo of the world, and going against the teachings of their ancestral sages. If nothing else, there are 3 ways to be unfilial, and having no heir is the worst, so what about childbearing? Fu Jian's response to that was that he could take concubines ma, and adoption was an option too, right? No way, no way, the civil officials were all in an uproar as they rushed forward to admonish him. Putting aside the problem of bearing future generations, men getting married with men would practically be the joke of the century. No one had ever heard of such a thing before. Of course, these scholars were also extremely fearful that if male marriage was allowed and they were forcibly taken as wives by the Hu military officials, wouldn't that be an utter disgrace for them? Fu Jian's response was, letting someone from an external tribe become the emperor of China had never been heard of since ancient times either, but didn't I still ascend the throne? What's the problem? Isn't that what happened? Chen Xing quickly said, yes, I'm the one fettered by old conventions, I need to keep an open mind and accept new things. So Tuoba Yan lowered his head again to read the poem and said, I saw you. So. Chen Xing suddenly felt like it was a little dangerous. He encouraged Hus and Hans to intermarry, and encouraged marriage between men as well. Is there another meaning behind the words you spoke today? So. Chen Xing was alert, so what? So I thought that you were the great Chan Yu's wife. Tuoba Yan said seriously. How could I be his wife? Chen Xing roared angrily and almost flipped the table, and even if we're going to talk about that, he should be my wife. No. This isn't a problem about who should be whose wife, I have nothing to do at all with that bastard Xiang Shu. Within the Viang Palace. Achoo. Xiang Shu suddenly sneezed and gave everyone in the hall a fright. Over the past few days, a new wave of visitors had already replaced the previous batch. As soon as news traveled out of Viang Palace last night and the families in Chang'an heard that young Master Shulakong had entered the capital, they immediately rushed over to act as matchmakers. Fu Jian was extremely generous towards old friends beyond the Great Wall, so what awaited Xiangshu was clearly the setting up of office and 3 divisions. Although there were still no news of the specific official position, it could not be any lower than that of a Grand Marshal. Xiangshu had the support of the ancient Qi Le covenant behind him. If they didn't come now to offer betrothals, then it would be too late if they were to delay for a few more days. The eldest son inherits the family business, so the young men brought over by each family were all without exception the younger son. In addition, there were also fathers and brothers who had brought along the portraits of their daughters for the great Chanyu's appraisal. Who cares if Xiangshu likes men or women? Send them all forward for him to see first before considering anything else. Xiangshu felt annoyed by all the clamor, but they were all of noble descent, so he had to take care to give them face. It's not like he could just beat them all up and kick them out. So all one could see were young men in the hall with faces as pretty as pictures. There were Xianbei people, Xiangnu people, De people, each with their own style. The attendants of 6 or 7 5 barbarian noble families kept shoving portraits in his face as well. Young men were pouring tea for Xiangshu one after another, which was part of the etiquette as mentioned in the ancient covenant. This behavior originated from the nomadic people beyond the Great Wall. When a young man paid a visit, and a young lady takes a fancy to him, she would hold up a pot as she pours him a cup of tea to indicate that they could get to know each other and ride on horseback together when they were free. With the sky as the blanket and the earth as a sleeping mat, they could go for a vigorous round. If they didn't take a fancy to the man, then they would avoid him and not come out, so their fathers and brothers would serve the man tea instead to indicate you're uglier than expected, just get lost ba. Over time, it evolved into a custom where handing over a cup of hand-brewed milk tea would express the sincerity of the one who offers a betrothal. Xiangshu really couldn't understand, if Fu Jian likes to screw Murongchang, then he can just screw him by himself. Why did he have to egg on the entire Chang'an to scramble all over one another to have that kind of interest as well? When the milk tea was sent over, he didn't drink from any of them either, because taking a sip from the cup of any family would be an expression of tacit consent on his part that they could try for a betrothal. There were so many families, and they were all Hu nobles, so it wouldn't be good for Xiangshu to slap their faces on the spot. Therefore, he could only say, for the milk teas that aren't touched, I will send someone to deliver them back afterwards. It'll be the same for empty cups. Then he glanced at a copper water clock, looked at the time, and his eyebrows scrunched up into a frown. Visitors began leaving one after another. It was almost dusk. Xiangshu felt like there were too many leads to think about today, and just as he was about to get up, he saw a figure outside the palace and said, "Yuan Xian? What's the matter? Come in." As soon as Yuan Xian was summoned, he immediately walked in grinning from ear to ear. At that time, the youngsters of the various families had not yet all left and started staring at him one after another. Xiangshu wanted to ridicule him for a bit, yet Yuan Xian beamed as he fell straight to the ground in prostration. "Great Chan Yu. Insignificant me was truly as blind as a bat last night." Xiangshu looked at Yuan Xian coldly. After all, one wouldn't hit a smiling man, and now that he did this, it wouldn't make sense for him to blow up. So he said, "How many siblings do you have? Leave their portraits." Yuan Xian chuckled. He went to one side first and poured a cup of milk tea, then under Xiangshu's strange gaze, he personally presented it to him and said with a little embarrassment, "Great Chan Yu, I have no siblings, I've just always." "Xiangshu, get out." Yuan Xin put down his cup and wanted to come over to hold Xiangshu's thigh. He said sincerely, "Great Chan Yu, I've always admired you. Over the years, I've always put off marriage because I hoped that I would be able to catch a glimpse of you as I've done today. I'm willing to devote myself to you, and..." Xiangshu lifted his foot and avoided Yuan Xian's embrace, then kicked him out straight. "Send someone to tell Jiantou." Xiangshu roared angrily, to confiscate all of the Yuan family's property and send their entire family back to Yuzhu. They're forbidden from entering the pass again for the next 100 years. "Great Chan Yu, have mercy." Yuan Xian was extremely shocked. He didn't know how he had provoked him and knelt down in the courtyard to hurriedly beg for mercy. Although he didn't know if Fujian would listen to Xiangshu and really confiscate his family's property, he was still afraid that once Xiangshu was in a high position, he would certainly cause trouble for him. Just as he was pleading for mercy, a beautiful lady came in from outside and didn't wait for any announcement before walking straight into the palace. Xiangshu glanced at her and saw that it was Princess Dinghai, who didn't know if she should cry or laugh. She saw Yuan Xian and asked, "How did the Yuan family provoke you?" Yuan Xian quickly said, "I don't know." Xiangshu, "I don't know either." Princess Dinghai recognized Yuan Xian, so she spoke a few kind words. Xiangshu didn't protest. Princess Dinghai motioned for Yuan Xian to get up. She didn't state her purpose in coming, and just smiled as she flipped through the portraits on the table. "Yo, looks like there's quite a lot who offered betrothals today. Are there any Hans?" "No," Xiangshu said coldly. Xiangshu and Princess Dinghai were old friends. 7 years ago, when she dismounted from her horse in the Yinshan Mountains, Princess Dinghai had dressed up as a man and participated in a hunt that really put her in the limelight. When they bumped into each other last night, they didn't have time to talk, so she came forward today to talk about the old days. "There's so much tea, are you offering them to the gods?" Princess Dinghai didn't mind Yuan Xian, who was still standing outside, and was about to take the tea on the table when Xiangshu said, "They're also for the betrothals. You'll have to marry the person whose cup you drink from." Princess Dinghai knew the rules, so she refrained from touching the 12 cups of tea that were lined up in a neat row. She poured a cup for herself and said, "I just came over from His Majesty's place, and I talked so much that my lips are all dry. It just so happens that I can get a cup of tea here to drink." Princess Dinghai would only appear gentle and quiet in front of Fujian or on occasions where she had to entertain guests, and was used to usually being free and unfettered. She was like a completely different person from how she was like last night. As Xiangshu faced his old friend, his tone sounded a bit more gentle. "Your younger brother has already been betrothed to someone, otherwise I'd chase you out now too." Princess Dinghai's eyes twinkled, but she smiled. "How does Shuludage know that I only have one younger brother?" Xiangshu took a deep breath. Princess Dinghai sat down at one side and explained, it's not that His Majesty wanted to torment you on purpose with that mischievous decree he came up with. I especially came over today without the intention of talking to you about any betrothals either." Xiangshu breathed a sigh of relief. "Princess King He, I wanted to ask, is the Han brother you brought over yesterday married? Is he someone by your side?" "Servant." Xiangshu said coldly, "No." Princess King He happily uttered an "ah," then continued, "That's good then, because I do have another younger brother." "Xiangshu." Princess King He continued, "He's called Tuoba Yan, and he joined the Imperial Guards when he was 14 years old. He's 18 this year and has already followed His Majesty for many years. I don't know why either, but he took a fancy to that servant of yours at first sight yesterday." "Xiangshu." Princess King He continued in an affectionate tone, "Yuan Xian, I heard that the two of you were old acquaintances." Yuan Xian, who was outside, said in a hurry, "Yes, yes, his father's name is Chen Jie, and his ancestral home is in Jinyang." Princess King He pretended she couldn't understand Xiangshu's expression and continued saying happily, "I heard Yanner mention this last night, so it turns out he's a well-known Han man. Ever since Yanner became an adult he has always wanted to find a boy from such a family, and it just so happens that he's the youngest son in the Tuoba tribe. If you nod your head in assent, I'll speak to His Majesty straight away." So Xiangshu could only change his tune and say, "I can't meddle in that, I'm not familiar with him." Princess King He was full of doubts. End chapter.